And I've structured my talk around this point of view that we have at OpenText, at least three of the main points, and I'll touch on them quickly now, and then we'll dive into them. And as I go through that, I pull out the 5 ways that I see content services changing. So really quickly, documents are at the center of most organizations and pivotal to digital transformation. Peggy talked a bit about this morning, and it's hard to argue that with the information age we're in. So we'll talk a bit about that. ECM is not the lead application. The content is generally better access through these process-centric lead applications. Not always, but often. And it's an odd thing for an ECM vendor to say, but I'll tell you a bit more about why I think that. And advancements in integration, automation, and intelligence are fueling this progress. I really think that it's a lot of the plumbing, actually, that's making this work that we don't talk about. So we'll go get a little bit into the plumbing. And the first one is that documents are the center of most organizations, and probably not shocking that an ECM vendor thinks that. If I was a semiconductor vendor, I'd probably tell you that semiconductor chips are at the center of digital transformation. But stick with me, and probably more accurate to say information is at the center of digital transformation, as our CEO Mark Barrenechea has done here. And there's a lot of things that aren't changing. Documents are going to be there. Certainly, the nature of documents are going to change. A lot of industries like legal, professional services, it's very natural to think of your documents as the center of your business. They have this word work product, where your documents are your business, and you'll find that in a lot of businesses as well. So documents aren't going anywhere. And just a way of looking at that. We think of business classes of documents: invoices, contracts, orders. Think back to my days in that shipping and receiving department back in, I won't say the year. Those documents still exist, we just don't put them in vacuum tubes anymore. The different document types, PowerPoints and HTML files and video. And more and more now we do see a lot more video. We have customers that they use drones to do surveillance and maintenance, so you have much more video. And there'll be more types of documents in the coming years, and we'll handle that. That's no real biggie. We tackle this all the time. And what is changing, though, is these dynamics. The Internet of Things, AI, cloud, always regulatory changes. This is what keeps our jobs interesting, I think. And for people like yourselves, I know a lot of you guys are operators of content services systems. That's what you're right in the thick of things. You're right where you want to be, I think. So just quick. I just want to touch on information sprawl, and I probably don't need to tell you guys what information sprawl. It's your life. And I know the AIIM research often shows information sprawl as the top 1 or 2 issues that you identify as a problem. And if you look at the middle circle there is definitely in your business, but you see it's touching customers and partners and vendors and government institutions. You'll see a lot of the different types of document classes I referred to a slide or two ago, and then many ways that they're communicated along the bottom. And I'm not trying to stress you out with a diagram, as some people might look at that and kind of get the cold sweats, and this is the bane of their existence. But just to make the point that this is happening. This isn't getting any smaller. This is getting bigger year over year. In fact, at OpenText, we use the term EIM, Enterprise Information Management. I work in content services, or ECM, which rolls up to EIM, but as OpenText, the broader task is enterprise information management and dealing with that information sprawl. And we really feel if you get that right, you have an information advantage over your competitors. We like to compare that to ERP and where it was at years ago, and where ERP is more about kind of automating back-end processes and getting a process advantage. Not to minimize ERP, but in many ways, EIM is becoming a thing and is a big problem that many of us are dealing with. Okay, so that brings me to the first of our 5 ways that content services is being redefined. And that's that technology is bringing the digital workplace together with the digital business, but don't confuse them. And I think I better describe this with a diagram. And we just think this is a useful way to look at the landscape. To think of it in terms of these 3 types of systems: engagement-centric systems, process-centric systems, and governance-centric systems. And I'll explain them a bit here, and we can talk about the differences. And they actually all have an ECM element to them, right? They all have a bit of content management, but their strengths are different. And to start on engagement centric, this is, not to name names, this is kind of in the sweet spot of Microsoft. You think of content creation, ad hoc collaboration, the wonderful things at Office Online, Microsoft Teams, Office 365 groups. Elements of ECM from a storage perspective, but not really their thing. And we call that the digital workplace. By the way, Gartner's starting to use this delineation as well between these some of these terms. And when we refer to the process-centric systems, are more ERP, CRM, HRM, the Salesforce, SAPs, those sorts of players where it's a different task. We call that the digital business. And of course, governance-centric down at the bottom, but maybe doesn't get the same amount of airtime in a lot of your companies as the others, but definitely is there to complete the picture. And if you think of the notion of this differences of these different areas, governance-centric systems that are more focused on regulatory issues and policy aren't really built to be as engagement-centric as Microsoft Teams, right? But neither is Microsoft Teams meant to be as governance-centric. So they each have their place, and we think it's important as you're devising your content services strategy to be thinking about what I say in the middle there, that to connect content to digital business. And I know, just speaking about OpenText for a bit, we try to do this through products that we have something called Extended ECM for Office 365, which allows you to take the content from your Teams environment, for example, and make it available to downstream processes. So, just a useful way to get your head around the players and really what it is you're trying to solve as you're touching each of those circles and the vendors you have. Okay, so the second point in the point of view, ECM isn't the lead application. The content is better accessed through process-centric systems. I say not always, but for the most part. Let me get into that. I thought I should go back to some basics on this, though, of why people adopt content services. And just we found that it tends to be one or more of these three circles. I'm generalizing a bit, but productivity, one version of the truth, or compliance and control. And just to touch on that first one, productivity, it can be people productivity, meaning just collaborating more efficiently with your coworkers, finding things. Process productivity, I'm referring to the contents that fuels your business processes. It can be an insurance claim that needs a document, things like that. So productivity, one version of the truth, and the term's been around for a while. I'm not sure if you use it, but when you don't have one version of the truth, you have rework, you have errors, you have lots of nasty consequences. And then compliance and control obviously refers to some of the more regulatory type things. And the little thin swirly line that goes around all three of those is, kind of gets across the point that they're all pretty related, aren't they? Like it's much better for compliance and control when you have a single source of truth. And just in general, when you have a more buttoned down environment, a lot of that is going to work better. So those are some of the main drivers. And at the risk of contradicting myself, I have another perspective on it. And when I look at what really triggers you guys to bring in a new system, I went back and looked at our deals in the last year and picked out some ones that were pretty typical. So this is a good cross section. So some of our new customers in this last year, this is what triggered it. Not so much how they're using it, but what triggered it. The one on the top left was a merger and acquisition. There were these three companies in Europe that were coming together, and they actually had to start from scratch to redefine an architecture, and content services was a part of that rethink. The middle one there, a digital transformation initiative. This was a big conglomerate. I can't say their name, but it's a household name, and they had a corporate-wide initiative to reduce manual holding and handling, and so they needed content services and some automation to make that happen. The one on the right, a new lead application, they brought in success factors to re-engineer their HR processes, and they had some special requirements around their job offer process, so they wanted that connected into their ECM system, and that triggered them to look at it. Quickly along the bottom there, on the bottom left, this was a financial services company that did an audit, and they had multiple systems and found that they had conflicting information in these systems. and really felt that was an exposure to their firm and knew they had to do something. So we see that. These are very typical. And the last two are different versions or different flavors of compliance, which is common. So different way of looking at it, not so much how you're using the software, but if you're interested, this is what we're seeing from folks like yourself on what's triggering them to actually get over the finish line and bring in a new system. Okay, so all these don't go perfectly as planned if we look traditionally over the last number of years, right? So it is worth poking into that to see what have been the challenges and how can we solve these. So just a few that you will know of. The application and update of metadata and classification. So attempts in the past, and there are times when you have to do this, but when you're forcing users to fill out a form when you're submitting a document into the system, and you have to do 8 different types of metadata, and we see this in certain industries, and it's just, let's be honest, it doesn't really work that well. It's you get resistance in your user community to that. So that's been a challenge with adoption for sure. Content silos and fragmentation, which kind of are counter to what I said on the previous slide about productivity and single source of truth. So that's been problems I know that companies have seen. Requirements to step outside of the business process. When you have, I like to think of an example of when you have a sales rep who does most of their work in Salesforce, and they're putting their proposals in there, their price quotes, and they're trained to do everything there. If you're asking that sales rep to go toggle over to the ECM system, and remember to always be saving it back there as well, right? I mean, it's just not in their nature to do that. So that's one of the challenges that we're up against. Collaborative work lacks coordination and integration with related processes. So back to something like Teams, you have users that are doing a great job collaborating on a project in Microsoft Teams, but it's staying right there, and that documentation isn't getting made available to downstream systems, then you're not really getting all the benefits you could. Not focused on making it easier to get work done. I guess that's probably a function of the previous 4 things, and with all of that, low adoption rates. I think you look back at a lot of the attempts in the past at ECM, not as much of the organizations adopted as you would think. So challenges. So I think it is worth recognizing what some of these challenges are as we move forward. Which kind of brings us to way number 2, that integration, automation, and intelligence are redefining content services. And it sounds kind of cheeky here that new approaches are driving adoption of ECM without users really knowing it. Which, as I said, is sort of cheeky or sneaky. I don't know what you want to call that. But I thought I'd give you an example of a customer that has an ECM system, and just so you can visualize what it would mean to have it. We use the term content in context, kind of surfaced within other lead applications where you don't even know there's an ECM system. So I'll run through a quick little tour here, and I'm not sure how well you can see the details there. Sorry about that. But so you're starting with an ECM system. So the customer, before we talk about surfacing it in another lead application, you do have an ECM system where you're keeping content. And in this situation here, it's organized, what we call workspaces, which are templated folders that we've decided are the way we want to organize how we do this. And you'll see there's, for this fictitious customer, global trade AG, you see sales orders and correspondence and all the relevant things there. So great, you've got an ECM system. But if you have an SAP environment and you do this sort of integration with it, what you see here is those same folders and documents surfaced right in SAP. And if you are someone who in most of your daily work works in SAP, you do it there. You don't need to know that there is an ECM system. So you'll recognize some of those folders there. There are reasons to go both directions, but similarly with integration with Office 365, you'll notice if you look closely on the left, in the Outlook folders for that account, so you can have that same sort of integration and synchronization regarding that account. And there's many different ways you can integrate at the Office 365 level. Salesforce looks familiar, right? Same kind of folder structure. And my earlier point about a sales rep that does most of their work there, as they're being trained to and have a lot of their applications in Salesforce, they can do that there and not have to toggle as much. And the last one here is success factors. This isn't following that same customer order. This is This is success factors where employees go into that user interface and get access to the documents that are relevant to them, and they're synchronized back to the ECM system. So that's just kind of, just to help you visualize what that might look like in that kind of an approach. And just one example of a customer that does that with us. This is, I can't say who they are. We don't have their naming rights, but it's a food and beverage leader in the UK, household name. I wish I could say it. And that was that example I mentioned earlier, where they had 3 companies that were coming together, and they had to rethink everything. They had to start from scratch with their architecture, which is really a nice luxury to have, I guess. And content services right in the middle of that. If you look in the middle of the slide, that's enabling the future digital strategy of the company. That's documents at the center, kind of to an earlier point. And they're rolling out the various solutions you see in the bottom left corner. As I said, a bit of a luxury that they're starting from scratch there. And just to close on this bit and talk about some of the benefits of that approach. And I think I probably focus a bit too much on the convenience of a user being able to get their stuff right from that interface. That's of the lead application. That's definitely a benefit. But the fact that your documents are automatically being filed from the lead application back into the ECM system, the fact that the metadata and classification type things are done automatically as that happens. You're not forcing people to do it. And when you're doing those things automatically, you're making search easier and a lot of the other things that come along with it. And from InfoGov and compliance perspective, all of that content in the lead applications are getting the InfoGov rigor of the underlying ECM system, which they don't always get that. So many benefits that you get to approaching it this way. So we'll talk about advancements in integration, automation, and intelligence fueling this progress, and especially the integration and automation part. I think I kind of focus a bit more of that in the coming sections. So I'm going to talk about a framework here, and just to show how this is generally structured. When I was showing that Salesforce example, the SAP, the success factors, it's actually all following the same common framework. And think of a lead application, and then think of the bottom part there, which is the open text. In this case, it's extended ECM solution. So this is going to be a bit of a build here. So something happens. There's a business object, let's say an order, a sales order happens, which triggers a workspace template which exists in the OpenText system. So this template has been defined under a certain structure at the beginning of the implementation, but there's a workspace template that's triggered. That workspace template actually triggers the creation of a workspace, which has all those different types of documentation that I was showing earlier. And that's informed by the lead application, SAP, for example. We get data and roles and structures and permissions and all kinds of things that help you complete that workspace and make it work. And then with the magic of UI integration, that whole workspace concept is surfaced in the lead application. And it's just following that approach generally that we do a lot of our work over the years to make that work. But to do this, whether it's us or any vendor, you need integration at a bunch of different levels. So I just wanted to talk a bit about that. You need repository integration. Like we say integration, then we think of like a single thing, right? But there's repository integration so that documents are flowing from the lead application to the ECM system, and the other way around as well. Data integration, so what I was saying about relationships and structures and stuff kind of flowing as well and being made available to ECM. User interface integration, so you can kind of do that function of integrating from the lead application. Roles and rights, event integration or process integration, you might call it, is everything that allows those triggers to happen. So there's actually a lot of work that goes into to having the right setup for that. And sometimes, different vendors can do this, right? Some vendors will do this as part of the implementation work if that's one of your requirements. And I know for OpenText we've productized all that, so you get it out of the box, and it's just it's just, I don't know, a decade worth of work. Like there was nothing simple about it. It's just the way we've been approaching this task for a long time. But in many ways, we think of it as the secret sauce for making a lot of that magic that I was showing earlier work. And I think of we think of kind of a close cousin to integration is automation. So intelligent automation is reinventing how content-centric processes are handled. So we'll talk a little bit about intelligent automation now. It's a huge theme of ours these days, and I know other vendors as well. And this is a conceptual approach that we take, and you might as well in other areas of your business. There's awareness, information, and intelligent automation. And so there's some notion of an awareness function where we're staying aware of one of those process systems, ERP or whatever, a content application, an engagement system. So we're being aware of, was there a sales order? Is there a new hire? Or is there an email that's come in? So we're staying aware. And then you combine that with some information, combine that with a relationship. Maybe you see at the bottom, maybe there's some GPS data. There's some information that allows you to how you're going to handle it. Maybe you're connected to an AI system where you can do some text analytics. So you combine it with that information and do something. You do a notification, you invoke a workflow, you invoke a records disposition rule, whatever it is you set up. And it's nothing, it's not magic here. It's a lot of this is having the framework for this. It's having a user interface where your users can set up the business rules to make that happen, having the integrations with these systems to do that kind of function. But so much of what we do is that, and it's triggers, workspaces, templates, and enabling that intelligent automation with the goal, let's not forget, of just reducing somebody's work and hopefully getting better outcomes as well. So awareness, information, leading to that intelligent automation. That might have been a bit academic, so I thought I would give a quick example of doing that in a real-world scenario, which is very viable right now. So a new hire onboarding. So you have a success factor system, employees hired, and success factors triggers the ECM system that you've got a new employee, right? An employee workspace is set up. Maybe it's a special workspace based on the region they're in or the type of role they are, but there's a workspace with the folder structure that you want to have for that employee. Data comes from success factors on the various attributes of that new employee. Maybe there's a completeness check, for documents. Did they sign their NDA when they were going through the hiring process? Are they ready to go throughout this? Some onboarding documents. Maybe we're capturing those documents with our capture technology. Maybe we have to generate these documents as part of the process. Maybe an approval workflow. Maybe a DocuSign type step and a notification. So that's just a typical application of some of the intelligent automation concepts that I had on the previous slide, and very doable now with today's technology. All right, so way number 4, that content services is being redefined. I talked about capture on that last step, and I just think it's really interesting how much capture is now, as the first step in many business processes, more important than ever in a lot of our processes. Sort of a reinvention of capture, which is really interesting to see if you've been around for a while. And here's a slide. It's got a lot of kind of distracting animation I got to get rid of, I think. But it's a slide that just shows some of the business processes that capture can be a part of, whether it's an invoicing process, an HR type process I was just talking about, sales order fulfillment. So many ways that capture, and I'm not sure it's the right metaphor, but it's more and more the bridge from the outside world to getting data into the system. So kind of a rebirth of capture. And we'll often sell solutions bundled like this, where let's say it's a customer with an SAP environment. They have a capture solution at the front end to do that information extraction and digitization function. Of course, ECM system in the middle that's doing all the wonderful things that does, and then maybe a document generation system to the right of it, if that's part of the process that you're automating. So a very common combination of products, and I think it's time to start thinking about capture in a lot of your automation initiatives to see if it makes sense for what you're doing. And there's a new category, kind of a new category, AI augmented capture, which I think is interesting to talk about, and more of the combination of some technologies. The capture part is that digitizing and extracting the information from the document, the email, whatever it is that's coming in. And then, if you have an AI and analytics solution attached to that, you've got just more opportunity for bringing context to that and improving the next step with it. So it's probably best that I give you an example of how this would look. And here's a use case we've seen in insurance, and I'll just set it up for you, where a policyholder gets in a car accident, and they decide to send an email to the insurance company. And rather than going through a form on a website where it's very structured, it might be an email that says, "Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I crashed my Volvo. It's been towed to the San Diego Accident Reporting Center. I'm on my way to the hospital, and I need a loaner to get to work tomorrow. Please get back to me." And so there's a lot of things in that, right, that you want to make use of as you're handling that properly. And modern capture technologies do a wonderful job of just extracting that content from the text of the email. It's certainly the person that's sending it in, pulling out the content. But when you add AI technologies to that and some text analytics, you have the opportunity then to look at some semantic analysis, and maybe you can get a sense for this is a very irate customer. They just said, "Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you, and I'm going to the hospital," and that could really inform how you're prioritizing that email and how you're flowing it through. Maybe this email flows to the insurance adjuster in San Diego rather than your central group. So it's just a good opportunity, I think, of how AI and analytics is really improving some of the base function of capture. So capture's kind of been reborn, and I would say, with some new technologies around machine learning and other things, having a wonderful set of applications that we're seeing. Okay, so this is going to be my last of the 5 ways that content services is being redefined, and I touch on information governance here. And the notion is that information governance systems are increasingly being looked at as an opportunity for insights, which is a slightly different perspective. And Peggy mentioned this a bit in her talk just before this, but I really like this quote from Forrester. Forrester did it's called a Now Tech report on information archiving last fall, actually, and Cheryl McKinnon, the analyst, said this: "Invest for compliance, but plan for knowledge discovery benefit." It's kind of like a vacation resort saying, come for the beaches, but stay for the food. It's one of those sayings I read, and I thought, I wish I would have thought of that statement. And what Cheryl's really saying there is, you got to do archiving for maybe some compliance reasons, maybe for the other storage benefits, other kind of logistical reasons. But do you realize that you're on the verge of being able to tap into a treasure trove of information? And I think we know that there's privacy considerations, PII. You can't do this willy-nilly, but there are definitely technology approaches that you can start to tackle it this way that you wouldn't have otherwise. So let's just say a bit about information governance, and it means different things to different people. And this is at OpenText how we'll define some of the main boxes of information governance: privacy and sovereignty, records and retention, application decommissioning, content minimization, and so on. And I think it's kind of fair to say that in general, it's sort of defensive, and rightly so. A lot of times information governance does have a defensive tone, and I think what we're talking about here is a bit of a mindset shift to thinking more of the opportunity for insights with some of those same sets of data if you can do it right. And I'll point to this very minor way of doing that. With our extended ECM solution, there's the ability right in the user interface for the ECM system to put a widget where you can get access to your archive data from our Info Archive solutions. So not easy to, in this case, it's for legacy orders that are archived. They're surfaced there for people to see. It's not hard to imagine a sales team, a finance team. It's fine this stuff is archived, but there could be times when they need to access that, and they will appreciate being able to get that in a pinch. So you get the benefits of the archiving without writing off the information from your for your daily needs. So that's a very little thing, but kind of along those lines. Another way of looking at information governance, and maybe a bit more from a stages perspective. On the left, acquire, migrate, remediate. This is sort of getting the content in, the capture, ETL, stuff we just talked about. File intelligence, so you can understand the content you have and maybe what you need to purge. Whether you think you should or not, you probably need to purge some of these things. In the middle, retain and comply. This is your records, your archives, or your just ongoing active content system. And then on the right, things that are more in the realm of discovery, legal holds. There's been a lot of technology applied to that side of it in recent years. I think just mainly due to the nature of the task there, the volumes of data. So more and more machine learning, which is great. But I think what we're on the cusp of here is people realizing, with some of these technologies, I can tap into that for marketing insights to sales cycles, insights to customer churn, any number of things, if we can deal with the privacy and the other issues around that. So I think that's what Forrester was talking about, that mindset shift of just kind of looking at this topic a little bit differently. That we'll see more of that, I think, in the coming years. So I'll start to wind up here, and this, I just want to recap in the spirit of reinforcement. We talked about documents at the center of most organizations. Documents aren't going anywhere. ECM is not the lead application. We love ECM, but most of the time you're better to think of having this content available in lead applications. Along the bottom there, the unsung hero in all this, I think, is the plumbing of integration, automation, and intelligence, and the improvements being made there. We talked about some of these challenges, and I think if you play your cards right and have the right content services strategy, you start to eliminate some of these challenges. And I won't reread this, but we talked about 5 ways that content services is being redefined. And I think we'll really see, the next 5 years being quite different than the last 5 years, and I'm pretty optimistic about that. So thank you, guys. Thanks, and appreciate you guys coming today. And do drop by the booth if you have any questions. So we have a full crew there for demos, product talks, whatever we can do. So thanks for coming today, guys. Enjoy the rest of the event.